If you're a mom that you like to stay active, not only for your physical well-being, but mental health, and you're worried how to navigate this in the different seasons of postpartum from little kids to bigger kids, you're not going to want to miss this episode today with Lara Costa. Lara is actually my podcast editor. We've worked together the past few years, and I've been completely inspired watching her do everything from 100-mile races to bikini competitions and learning how to power lift. You're not going to want to miss this episode. She gives some great tips and advice on how she's navigated postpartum and continued to stay active. Let's start the show. All right. So have you ever had that friend that literally they were up for anything and they do all the things? That is my friend and podcast editor, Lara Costa. Thank you so much for coming on a show that you will be editing later.
Yeah, I think it's gonna make my job really easy.
Right, exactly. You're like editing your responses as you talk.
Right?
I think one of the things when we first met was that we kind of connected because you were pretty active. And I think when we first had that conversation, I did not have any sense of what that meant. And I've slowly, because we've known each other a couple of years now, like you do all the things. You've done like 100 milers, you've done bikini figure, you just did a random adventure race, like 17 miler the other day. You're doing powerlifting, all of these things. Like, is this always been kind of who you are? Or is this something that's kind of evolved since you've become a mom?
It's always been the way. I mean, I've always been this way. My my upbringing was like we grew up on a farm, and I have younger triplet brothers, and it was kind of a like keep how to keep yourself busy when you get shut outside all summer long, and that kind of just with three brothers, it's like, well, one of them is doing this, well, I'm going to do that too, and then like, well, we're going to go play baseball. All right, well, let's go play baseball. And so I've always just kind of jumped into whatever because, it sounds like fun, so why not do it?
You've been game for anything. That's so cool. So your kids are, I think our kids are actually the same ages. So 12 and 9. Yes.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so like when you were pregnant and still kind of had this, you did all the things, looking back, was there any information or guidance that you had to say, hey, this is how I can still stay active, um, but have a nice, safe pregnancy? Like what information, looking back, did you have?
I have to admit that I've really never been one to look for guidance. Um,
Which I love because that's like normal people, right? Like
yeah,
there's
I mean,
like this spectrum of people that like where I live in DC, everybody's like over obsessed with information. And then there's other places people are like, you know what, I'm just gonna do my thing.
yeah, I went into pregnancy first off not planning on being pregnant, so it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, we're on this journey now. And I was under care with a midwife, and so I was like, so I like to run and stuff. Is That's cool, right? She's like, well, yeah, if you've been running and running still feels good, just listen to your body, and if you have any questions, let's ask them and we'll figure them out together. I'm like, all right, that's all I need to hear.
Yeah.
So I just kind of ran until it was uncomfortable, and then I just would walk, and that kept being comfortable. So walking towards the end of my pregnancy was basically what I did.
Yeah. And for you, like, did you have any messaging from any of your providers that like any of the stuff that you were doing was like off limits or bad? Or it sounded like you had a pretty supportive team.
I did. It was actually not so much my recreational activities that were the problem, but it was more so my job at the time. Uh,
Mm,
I I had a very active job. Um, I know not everybody lives in the southeast, but we have Publix, and I worked at Publix in the meat department, and so I was working like 55-hour weeks because I was a manager, and the boxes that we get in from the truck, they're like some of them are like 90 pounds.
yeah.
So like unloading a truck and moving product, like I'm short as it is. I'm only 5 feet tall. So already like I have to like work a little harder to get things where they need
Yeah.
to be. And so then as I'm getting farther into my pregnancy, I was like, am I going to be able to unload this, like, thousands of pounds of product off the truck? Am I going to be able to, lift like 60 pounds of beef onto the wherever? And
Right.
so that was more of the issue. And that was where my coworkers were like, hey, we're happy to help you. So you don't need to keep doing this. And
So
eventually I'm
it
like, all right, fine.
so really what it wasn't anybody in any sort of like medical profession that was like, "Hey, you can or cannot do this." You were kind of up to your own of like, "Okay, make it work, make your job work," like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and again with my coworkers, they were all I think I had worked with them long enough for them to know I wasn't just gonna like milk my pregnancy,
Right.
but
Because every pregnant
so
woman does.
right, but I mean in my head that was living in
Mhm.
my head, of course, but knowing that they were always offering to help and they
Mhm.
weren't offended when I was like, no, I can do it. But
Right.
then when I was like, okay, I need help, and they were happy to help, that took some of the pressure off of me, um, feeling like
You're
there
letting
were any
somebody down.
restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I was
Yeah.
letting somebody down. But no,
Yeah.
I never had any, no one ever told me like, you can't lift over 30 pounds or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to, you know, the kids are 12 now, like thinking back 12, 13 years ago, I think there was just generic information out there, but it's interesting because one of the stuff that always kind of came around that I thought as a PT was kind of silly was, don't lift over, 20 or 30 pounds, which, clearly for your job, nobody was paying attention to that. So but there was all this stuff, don't do this, don't do that. But I would be curious as to see if it's like geographical advice. I find that there's a lot of that stuff now where certain things are culturally told to mothers, like to do this or to do that, or don't do this or don't do that. I'd be curious to see if that was a thing. But again, like 12, 13 years ago, we just weren't getting any specific, physical activity information. And even I was just talking to Kate Johnson, and her youngest is 6, and she said even then she's like there really wasn't that much. Like people always feel bad. They're like, "Oh gosh, I should have known." I'm like, "You should have known what? Like what was to know?" So,
It may be like a regional or like where how you grew up because I never even thought to ask, Am I allowed to do
right,
this
why
or
would
is
you
it for somebody
ask?
to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I've actually thought about this. Maybe it's because I grew up in like on a farm and it's very common to like you go to the pasture
Yes.
and like, oh, the cow had her baby. Oh, look at that. And so I'm like, oh, well, every I'm meant to have a baby. I'm just gonna go live my
Right?
life.
Well,
So
and I'm trying to think so I have an older sister who's 2 years older than me, and my parents built our house, and I've heard stories of, like, my mom helping my dad build our house, and then, of course, the story with me is, like, my mom was, like, making my dad liver and onions for dinner while she was in contractions, that kinda stuff. Like, and that's where when people look back, you bring up a really good point, like, you didn't ask because there wasn't anything to ask because you were just supposed to keep going on with whatever. Um, and then now we've really sort of had a shift towards, okay, maybe there's stuff that we do want to know. But I do think the pendulum kind of went the other way for a while. That was like, okay, don't do CrossFit, it's bad. Don't do lifting, don't run, don't. And now maybe we're kind of settling back in the middle a little bit. But to your point, like you had to do the work on the farm. My mom had to help my dad finish the house. Like nobody cared that she was pregnant.
right, right.
Right? So, like, with postpartum, like, how quickly, did you get your, like, 6-week checkup with Presley and you were just like, "All right, let's go, let's do it."
So I when I'm injured or I have to like sit down for more than like 10 minutes, like I kind of lose it. I'm the worst. I'm the worst. So before pregnancy, the only other time I had a significant injury or I had to take time off running was when I tore my ACL and I
Mm,
had to complete reconstruction. And like that was the worst thing I
yes.
had ever experienced. And coming back from pregnancy, I was like, well, I was not like a fan. My pregnancy was both of them were fine, totally normal, no issues, but like I was not a fan.
Mm,
I just didn't like not feeling at home in my own body.
Yeah.
And then come to postpartum, especially the first time, I was like, nobody told me it was going to be like this. So that that was really strange, like a strange dichotomy of wanting to get back to running and like activity as soon as possible, but also feeling like I was in someone else's body. Like this is not my body. I don't know what's going on over here. So I don't I was probably 6 or so weeks when I
Yeah.
tried to run, and then I'm like, what is this feeling? it was just and it was just like things were moving differently and things like felt everything was different. And so it took me a while to really like feel sort of normal again. And it
I
was just really unexpected.
I feel like that's such a hard conversation to have with somebody who either is thinking of getting pregnant or they are pregnant about how to adjust expectations. Like, I feel like there's some like magic elixir that like we either drink or potion that's thrown in our face or something the second, we become parents that all of a sudden, oh, we get it now. And you can't see that until you've passed through like this, magic portal or something like that. And I try and figure out, without being condescending, how to have that conversation to explain to somebody how different you feel, what it feels like when your boobs are massively overengorged like bricks, and the only thing you want is for someone to get that milk out of there. And the idea of you jumping up and down and running, it would take like 5 sports bras to handle that. Like, I don't know how you have that conversation.
And I think a lot of it is like your mindset going into it
Yeah.
because some people love it. And some people are like, this is I feel the best, with a newborn. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
not for me. Like,
No.
let's fast forward, please. So I don't know. I
No.
think that could have a lot to do with it too. I don't know that there is a way.
Yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember we had friends that, he was drunk at the time, that probably didn't help, but, like, he was telling us that, like, the first 6 weeks were a mind F, and I was like, "Oh, no, no, no." No, he was totally right. But, after coming out of delivery where things didn't go as planned, and, like, for me having a C-section and trying to roll over and nurse a baby who was, eating on demand, and apparently babies need to be burped, go figure, and if they don't get burped, they'll wake up in 45 minutes, bloody murder screaming, and they don't care, like, that whole initial experience to me was not, I think, anything I had ever seen in a movie, anything that I had ever seen in a book, like, that was rude awakening kind of stuff, but I didn't know if it was just me because I had gone through this traumatic experience or if it was like this for everybody.
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I experienced like a shell shock.
Yeah.
It was like I
That's
was
a good word.
yeah, I was shell shocked. It was like a totally unexpected side that
Yeah.
I mean, and in fairness, maybe I did hear people say it, but I didn't understand.
Yeah, I think you hear the words, but you don't really know what they mean at that point. I said, it's so funny. I still have moms that'll come in and they've got some sort of breastfeeding issue or clogged duct or something like that, and I still have like PTSD, and I'm like withdrawing my boobs. I'm like, ah, it's like phantom boob pain.
Right, right.
So things are jiggling, things are moving. Like, how do you now bridge the gap between you've got this foreign body and getting back to a semblance of kind of who you think you might be or who you are?
Well, it was different from 1 to 2
Yeah.
because with our first, we call her a trick baby because
My husband says that.
she was such a good baby. She was so good. She just like did her baby thing, and we put her in the running stroller, and she would just was like living her best life, and we'd run
Yeah.
for like 3 or 4 hours with her in the thing, and she'd be totally cool. We'd just we'd stop to like I'd stop to breastfeed her, put her back in the stroller, and we'd just go. And she was living her best life. And then so that helped to
Yeah.
have a baby who was like that. So then
Easy.
the second one comes, and from the minute he was born, I'm not exaggerating, from the literal minute he was born, he was just screaming and unhappy. And he was like that until he was 5. and until he could like communicate, and
Our
then he could
boys are
tell us.
very similar. Our boys are very similar.
I mean, this kid at like 10 months was unbuckling himself from the stroller and climbing out. And I mean,
Mm,
he had his own ideas of how things needed to go, and
yeah,
he couldn't tell us. So
right.
he was just going to figure it out and show us. No, I'm not doing this today.
Yeah.
So with him, and then having two, it was
Mhm.
a lot harder to navigate coming back into how like feeling normal in my body, because I didn't have a child who was just going to be along for the ride like his sister
Yeah,
was. He had his own plans.
yeah.
So it was a little trickier.
So when was kind of the first thing or, like, when was kind of the first time where you're like, "Okay, I have a hot second to kind of focus on myself." Like, 'cause I think that's the other thing too, like, um, first time around, we feel like we have a lot to prove, or you have an easy baby, and then you've got a couple of kids, and then you're like, "Oh my god, when am I going to have a minute to breathe and kind of find this piece of me again?" When was that for you?
I would love to say that I gave myself grace and I took it easy and I gave myself
I know you,
time.
you didn't.
I didn't at all.
Yeah,
I
me neither.
very quickly, what as soon as he started climbing out of the running stroller, I found a treadmill, like a somebody was giving away a treadmill. I was like, "Oh, I guess I gotta get a treadmill." And I just did a lot of my runs on the treadmill, and that was like, I hate treadmills,
Oh,
but
I
I
do
did
too.
it because that's what I had to do. So that's what I did.
Yeah,
And then, slowly as he got older and chilled out a little bit, I could run up, and we have our road is a quarter of a mile. So I could run up and down the road, and then, like, I go back and check on him, and he'd be fine. And I would go and do another lap, and I'd go inside and check. So
yep,
I did that for a while. But it was just like these tiny little steps of what can I get away with? Okay, this
yes.
worked. Let's do this.
Yeah. I I see a lot of moms, um, very similar to what you're describing, and I think it's important for providers to recognize that there are moms that if you tell them not to do something, it's devastating. Like, it we need to find little opportunities, like you said, even if it's a quarter mile down and back and then go in and check on the kid, like, those tiny little hits, if added up, are what you need to get through your day for stress management, or this is just, kind of who you are. And then there's other people, like, I know after my second, like, I was definitely not as active. I wasn't as motivated to get back. I was not willing to go on a treadmill for her. I hate treadmills that much. I don't know that we maybe got walks in a bit more, but it was more in the context of, like, dropping her brother off at preschool and then, walking both home in the double stroller and that sort of thing. Like, I definitely was not that person that I'm like, I need to move all the time, but I talk to so many moms that, like, movement is life, and if they do not have that, and I think we need to recognize that, like, moms need to have access to that sooner. We need to support them in that, and that might mean that they go out and do things symptomatically, and that's still okay. Like, there's such I think in mental health, I feel like there's such a, important role for physical activity for people, period, and then especially moms in this heightened period of stress.
Yeah, and then I've been an athlete my whole life. I started
Right,
running in middle school, and you have this huge transition into motherhood of like now you're a mom.
right. What does that
So
mean?
what is that? And wait, are you gonna tell me I can't? I've been a runner my whole life. Am I not a runner anymore? Like, are you
Right.
taking this away from me? I'm like, I'm sorry, but my fragile ego cannot deal with that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you have like for me, I had to like find some way to for my mental health,
yeah.
and not just the being able to move my body, but also like, no, I'm still this person over here, even if it's
Yes.
manifesting in a different way.
Yeah.
It's still me.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, you have a lot of things that I've kinda watched you, and all the things that you do require a lot of, like, an investment of time. So, like, when you were doing, I can't remember if it was bikini or figure, I get them
A
mixed up.
bikini,
When you were doing
bikini, yeah.
bikini competition, there's obviously a lot of, um, food management that has to happen, pose training, workout kind of stuff. When you've trained for the longer races, obviously you've got to put the time in for that. When you're doing the powerlifting, you've got to work on technique and kind of show up at the gym. Like, for a mom who's just starting out with a little kid, like, how do you find time to do this stuff? Like, what are some things, kind of looking back, that have really been helpful for you? And what are some things where maybe somebody told you, hey, this is how you do it, and you're like, nope, that's not how it worked at all?
It's been it's been a lot of trial and error, and then also being willing to, like, once I have something that works, like, being okay with the fact that that might not work for very long and I might have to adjust.
Yes.
So for a very long time, we homeschooled. So I had that
I
as
bow
I
down to you for that.
well, I don't know if it's like a plus or a minus as far as scheduling, because I was responsible for my kids' education
Yeah.
and they were home all day. And so I did a lot of really creative things. Um, I like when I was training for um, my most recent 100 miler, like I was determined to run sub 24 hours.
Mhm.
Because I'd been trying for like 6 years to do it. I was like, I'm doing it this time. So like the training, my coach knew, like, we are friends, and he knew like my time commitments. I was
Mhm.
also working for a Chinese company at the time, and I had to work on their hours. So I was
Oh
working like
gosh.
3 a.m. to 9 a.m. um, 6 or
You
7
are an
days a week.
Energizer bunny, by the way.
I don't know. I can't, like, I don't know why. I am the way I am. I don't know why. But so it was like 6 to 7 days a week, 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then like after that, then couldn't like get up and run early.
Yeah.
So like we, do the morning breakfast, and then like we'd homeschool, and so then it'd be like midday. And I'd be like, "All right, kids, here's the tablet, here's the TV. Hope you don't die." And I, do my in the middle of the day, like run up and down the street. And my daughter was a little older at the time, like I don't know, like 7, 8. And so she'd like come outside to get me if
Mhm.
something was wrong or they needed something. Or they'd come outside and like ride bikes around me and as we go up and down our street. So I did like, miles and miles and miles. I do like one time I did a 20-mile run up and down our quarter mile street.
My gosh. And this is
But
Florida weather too, for those of you
yeah,
that don't know, like, it's not, like, calm and cool and low humidity either, so
no, so it's real hot.
not perfect
But then
conditions at all.
no, well, I'd rather be hot than cold. I wasn't complaining. But, or, like if I had a long run, like, I would break it into segments.
Yeah.
And that's just like I just stay in my dirty running clothes all day and like, okay, I have 30 minutes. I'm gonna go get three of those miles done. And like so throughout the day I'd cover 30 miles.
Yep.
But it was in like teeny tiny dumb little chunks like that. But my coach knew, and he
Mhm.
gave me a training plan that was adaptable and wasn't super, like, we focused on quality of miles and not quantity of miles. And it worked. So I
Mhm.
think having somebody who supports you and understands your circumstances as far as like a
Yeah.
coach or something like that is like 100% necessary. Um, if you are determined to like get to a certain goal.
Yeah.
If you're just like trying to get back into it, obviously you don't need a coach to tell you what to do. But that helped me get to that specific goal. Because if I had a coach who was like, here's your training plan and this is what you have to do, and it was
Right.
like, like a 90-mile week, I'm like, I can't do this. Let's
I think that's such a good point about, now I feel like there's so much information that you can get on the internet, and it's like, all right, well, I can get this on the internet for free, or just 19.95 or something like that, or like actually investing in someone who's willing to look at your unique situation and help you make it work. Like, the my half that I just did, that I think we were supposed to run 4 times a week, and I was like, I'm not giving up my 2 mornings to go to the gym. Like, those are staying. So I was like, all right, I'm running a half on 2 runs a week and 2 times to the gym. And it was great, and it met my expectations. But, like, to your point, like, if you're trying to shove motherhood into, a square peg into a round hole, like it's gonna hurt. It's not gonna work. But to have somebody, and that's so smart for you to have reached out to somebody, one who I think you would need to if you're gonna do a 100-mile race anyway, but just guessing, I'm not planning on doing one. But to have somebody be okay with, hey, you know what, this isn't gonna look like your typical training plan, but we can make something patched together that's going to make it so that you can still do what you need to do. I think that's so important to know that there's so many ways to do stuff. It doesn't have, and you don't have to do it one way. I love that. I love that. Now, did
Yeah,
you have, was it similar like when you did your bikini competition as well? Like how like with food, I know that's a whole different animal. Like how do you navigate that? Because you also, have kids that, may or may not be picky eaters or.
yeah. Well, I am, I don't know, lucky. I don't know if lucky is the word because I feel like we kind of, and I don't mean this to sound like arrogant or whatever, but like we kind of raised them to to be like good eaters. Like we were pretty intentional with that.
Yeah.
So it worked. Eventually it worked. But
You'll have to send me
I
your playbook because that didn't work on our end. We were intentional with it crazy, nothing.
yeah, I don't know, just I don't like there was some luck involved for sure, but like but so I would have my meals that were like, measured and weighed out and macros accounted for, and they would have like I use the same ingredients for whatever they were eating, but I
Mm,
would, I'd fancy it up a little bit for them. Um, so they saw my food as like fueling my muscles. That's what we said. This is
yeah.
my muscle. I call it my muscle food. Like this is my muscle food. This is what I'm eating for this. And they were cool about it. They were always supportive. They're pretty cool kids. Um, so they just would eat a variation of what I was eating for the most
Mhm.
part. And then, of course, there were times like getting closer to show day where like selection's getting pretty slim for me as far as what I was going to be eating. So
Yeah.
I just had to like mentally zone in, like they're having my family is eating something different than I am, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna have to be okay with that. So like I'd sit down at the table with them and like I'd eat my little meal and they'd be having normal food
Mhm.
and we'd all still eat together, but we were just eating different things.
I like that in the context of, um, I'm not quite sure how, like, if this happened with you, but, like, I was in a house where both my parents were teachers, so we happened to be on the same schedule, and everybody had every meal together, like, you wouldn't sit down and start eating until everybody was there. Our household is not like that. My husband works West Coast hours, my kids have after school stuff, like, probably very similar to you. But just the fact that, like, it's okay that we can have different things from other people in our family. Like my son is more sensitive on what he eats, and so like he might have something different. It took me a long time to be like, you know what, that's okay. And again, like expectations of everyone should sit down and eat the same thing, everybody should do all the same stuff. Like I think having more flexibility with that, it's just one less thing to have to worry about, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and then also now that the kids are a little bit older, like we have a rule where, and this is really just for my sanity, but I'm
Yeah.
like, if you want to eat something different, by all means, walk to the kitchen and prepare it for yourself. Like, as
Yes.
long as it's like, I'm kind of a stickler for like, have you had something nutritious today? So it was like,
Right.
as long as it's something like nutritious or whatever, knock
Yeah.
yourself out, but I'm not doing it for you.
Right. But based on that conversation, those expectations that you said that the food is fuel, I had that conversation actually yesterday with my son that he was talking about. He gets tired first thing in the morning. And I was like, well, let's look at what you're eating for breakfast. And you might be getting like a sugar crash because he does like rice checks or something. It's very, very carb, not high protein at all. I was like, all right, well, let's take baby steps. What if I can, make you French toast in the mornings I'm not there? You can just warm up some that's in, at least it's a start. At least there's an egg in there or something like that. But I love the idea that we're having these conversations with our kids and setting kind of those examples that it is fuel. We want to make good choices, but not just because mom and dad said so.
Right, and that is something we do a lot too, like, which I'm not gonna be their dictator. I'm
Yeah.
gonna try to educate them and help them make good
Yep.
choices, but we'll try to reach a compromise. Like, they love having
Yeah.
cereal for breakfast, and I'm
Yes,
like,
mine too.
so our compromise is they get on school days, they get, like, multigrain Cheerios, and I put a scoop of protein powder in with their milk, and that's what they have. It's,
Yeah.
kinda like chocolate milk at that point because it's like a chocolate protein
Exactly.
powder, and then
Yep.
on the weekdays, they get to pick, like, a fun cereal if they want. So, we just kinda, like,
It's
go
compromise.
at it with a logic and then
Yeah.
compromise.
Yeah. And I do think, like, just that intentionality is just so different than our generation kind of got brought up with, but I think we also have more information too, which I think is good. You guys have been in the gym a lot more. I've seen you with your daughter. She's starting to do some lifting. Like, how cool is that to watch her kind of, develop her body image, develop her sense of self, that she's strong. Like, I just think it's the coolest thing as a mom to watch your daughter kind of pull that, to just watch it evolve. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, she's just turned 12, like, last week. So, last year when she was still 10, like, just before turning 11, she asked if she could go to the gym with me one day. I was like, "Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course." We have I live in a tiny little town, and we have a locally owned gym. It's a powerlifting gym that we go to, and so, like, the owner, Jordan, he's, like, very cool with kids. He's very, encouraging of kids being in the space, and so I just brought her, and she was just kinda, like, watching everybody, and we have a ton of strong women in this gym. So
Nice.
she's seeing all of these, like, women deadlifting, like, I don't know, 300 pounds, and just she's like, "Whoa." And so then she just started asking more and more to come, and I'm like, "Absolutely, let's go." And then eventually the owner of our gym also puts on powerlifting meets, and there was a youth meet at the end of last summer, and she said she wanted to do it. So she started doing training sessions with Jordan, and she competed in her first powerlifting meet last
That's so
August.
cool.
And now she's been at it for a year, and she's actually 2 days ago, she weighed herself and she's 93 pounds, and she just squatted over her body weight for the first time, so she squatted 94
Aw.
pounds. I know. And she's, deadlifted 140.
Oh my god.
I know. So, and
Well, not
she
for nothing, mom has a few records of her own, by the way, right? Wait, don't you have some Florida
I
records or
mean, like,
something?
technically, they're like, like my age group and my weight class in this division. So it's like very like granular, but like technically, yes, I have some
Can we
state
not
records.
diminish the records here? Because you lift more than I can, and I'm a lot bigger than you. You're killing it, and but I think the point here is that, like, I don't remember being that age and, you know, being exposed to other women kind of doing these things that make you feel strong and, you know, making choices other than the food pyramid, like what you put in your body and why. And it's just the coolest thing right now to watch friends of mine not only set the example for their kids, but to now the kids are starting to get to the age where they're kind of making those steps on their own. And it's just the coolest thing. Like, how does that make you feel?
Oh, she told me the other day. So she's in sixth grade, and she
Hmm.
said that we our town has one high school, so that's
Hmm.
how small it is. But she found out they have a weightlifting, powerlifting class
Oh,
that she can
cool.
take, and she's like, "When I go, I want to be a freshman, and I want to deadlift 200 pounds, and I want everybody to be like, whoa!" like, I'm like, Presley, I have a feeling you're gonna get there before you are a freshman, but
Probably.
yeah,
Oh
but,
my gosh.
she's just, like, so and she is, like, just barely shorter than I am at this point, and she's, like, all arms and legs. She's, like, this,
She's
that
adorable.
lanky growth
Yes.
phase,
Yeah.
And so she's like really unassuming when you look at her. She just looks like a sixth grader, but then she's just like, she wants to be like so strong. And I'm like, this is
I love
amazing.
that. I
I
love that because
know.
I know when I was in 6th grade, that was not anything that I thought about at all.
No.
But definitely now, like I was just talking with somebody earlier, and we were talking about our first like weight room experiences, and I do remember occasionally we got dropped in there during swim team, and occasionally I remember one like cross country run practice or ski, I can't remember what it was, and we did some bench presses, and I remember just feeling like incredibly badass about the whole situation, and that thread coming forward till now. But so cool for her that she's finding this consistently, and she's got role models and a place to go and supportive parents, and that's just got to be such a cool thing to watch. So that's
It
awesome.
it totally is. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, quick questions. We do rapid fire here at the end for everybody. Favorite activity since becoming a mom?
Including my kids in my
It does. It,
activities.
it it may or may not have to. There's no limits on this at all.
No, no, that is
Okay.
including
Oh,
because
okay.
yeah. So, okay, example. This is just like a memory that will live forever in like
Yeah.
the happy part of my heart.
Yeah.
During COVID, when everything was shut down, we had some virtual races that
Hmm.
everybody was doing. And one of them was run the longest you've ever ran.
Hmm.
And so the kids were like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so we have a lot of trails that are, like, right by our house, like, I could walk out my front door and I'm at a trail and a half a mile.
Hmm.
So we did that during COVID, and at the time, I think they were, like, 6 and 9,
Hmm.
I think, and they ran 8 miles on the trail. I
Oh my
know,
God.
I know, so it's just, like,
Wow, that's
doing
so
stuff like
cool.
that. I know, I love it, and, like, going to so the 2 communities that we're, like, really tied into are ultra running or trail running and powerlifting right now, and the fact that we can all do them together
Yeah.
and ju just, like, "Go on, little birdies fly." I just love that.
That's so cool. I am a ultra runner spectator. We both fangirl on Michael Wardian. If you don't know him, I occasionally will run into him on the trail, and I will immediately text Laura and be like, "I saw your boyfriend." But I
Gonna
don't
meet
think I
him one
have an
day.
ultra. Right, exactly. I don't think I have an ultra in me, but I'd never say never, right? One piece of advice for new moms.
Be okay with changing how you're doing things.
Mm,
Um, it could work for a little bit, and if it stops working, just adapt and figure out what's gonna work at that specific time. And don't let anybody tell you that you have to or you shouldn't do anything. Kind of like listen to your intuition and like, does it feel right for you? Then do it. Or if it doesn't feel right for you, then don't do it. But like, it's like a choose your own adventure.
yeah,
You don't
yeah.
have to do what somebody else is telling you.
Yeah, I think to kind of tack onto that, and if there's something that you decide you want to do, find the people around you that support you to help you do that, because those voices are out there. I think, and that's why I wanted to talk to you because you're such a great example of you've done all these things that are beyond my wildest dreams of anything I would ever, think to tackle or have time for, and you've literally done them all. All right. For you, this could go, you're actually more in the know about kind of what's out there, than me sometimes. Like, what's someone in kind of like who would be an athlete or who would be a voice or something like that that we should pay attention to more? You always give me good recommendations here.
So there is an ultra runner that I've been following for a long time. And I'll be honest, I'm gonna have to look up her last name because I only know her first name is Sally and I know her Instagram handle, like, right?
Oh, what's her Instagram handle?
The yellow runner.
Yes, I was gonna say yeah, I've been
Yeah,
following her. Yeah, she's fantastic.
she's awesome. So she is like so strong. And the reason I love her is like she always talks about incorporating her kids into everything and
Hmm.
they're older now. But she also like preaches strength training as an ultra runner.
Yeah,
And I'm like, why didn't I know about this sooner in my running career? Could you imagine if we were like in middle and high school and we had been given any sort of strength training to do? Like
right.
how that would have affected us long term? So I just love that she's an ultra runner and she's like, I got big muscles, then look at me. and I'm a mom, and I have these kids that are
Yes.
amazing. So I love her.
That's awesome. No, I've been following her since you told me to pay attention to her, and I'm actually starting to work with more moms who do ultras now, and to your point, like, what I'm seeing is people moms are starting to do more strengthening, but not the level of strengthening they need to be doing. We need to get beyond the body weight. We need to start lifting weights. And I'm a big proponent of if you're childbearing age, let's start having the conversation about lifting heavy now, because by the time you get to perimenopause and menopause, and we're starting to talk about osteoporosis or menopause induced osteoporosis, I've already planted that seed and we don't have to have an argument about it.
Exactly.
Love it, love it, love it. All right. And then finally, for you, what does it mean for you to be an active mom in postpartum?
For me, it means like people will ask all the time, like, "What's your why?" But I'd rather ask, like, "What's the why not?" Even if
Oh,
just because you're a mom now, just because you have kids now, why not keep doing the things that make you happy, and why not include your kids?
yeah. I love that. I love that. And we'll end on that. If you want to follow more of Lara's adventures, whatever that may be next, I know I've been entertained about the whole thing, and you can find Lara on Instagram, Lara Running Wild. Thank you for all that you do. You've been such a gift to my life the last couple years, and helping me with all my stuff, and just been a great person to follow and friend. And thank you for being on.
Oh, I couldn't have asked for a better time. Thank you,
Thanks.
Carrie.